When I was 14, I was riding a bicycle with my friend, the only Italian in Greenwood, South Carolina, named David Pannone, and I got hit by a car at 55 miles an hour. I had something called traumatic brain injury. I was in a coma for a few days, 3 or 4 days. I was in the hospital for a long time. I didn't break a bone, but I had blood clots. I still have scars on my elbows and knees and ankle and hip, and I was in pretty bad shape. I don't remember most of the 9th grade. This happened in June of 1972, right about the time Nixon was going, "I'm not a crook," and all that stuff. So that kind of somehow changed my life. I couldn't run for a long time. Then I went back to running, and I was doing really well and went off to this Baptist college. It was actually the best school in South Carolina and still is, because the track coach said, man, you know, I was running pretty good stuff, like 10th grade, a 10:22 mile, you know, and like a 4:30 mile in the 10th grade. But I got bored. I got up in the morning at 5:30. I met my friend Philip Snoddy, unfortunate last name, and we went running forever, you know, and he had this kind of crazy right-wing speak in tongues kind of family. So I'm running from Dad with his artificial hips handing me and hitting me with a cane, and Philip was running from God or something. So that happened. And then I went to college. Well, then my dad got sick and his intestines blew apart, and I had to run his business for quite a while. And then a miracle. I mean, they said he had 2% chance of living, and he lived through it, and I got to go off to college and quit running. But all of that stuff, especially with the running, gave me some kind of discipline I think that you need to be a writer. I get up now, 2 hours of writing is a heck of a lot easier than an hour in the morning of running. It just is, you know. Okay, now, all of this said, and that was just the highlights. There are a whole lot of these kind of weird stories, but I'll not tell them all. And they're all very embarrassing. Flannery O'Connor, the great writer from Milledgeville, Georgia, said, if you can make it through your childhood, if you can endure childhood, you got enough to write about. Hey, if that's for me, I'm not here. Whose phone is that? Let me talk to him. Okay. Said, if you can endure childhood, you got a lifetime to write about. So, when I turned about 40, I'd published a bunch already, but I started writing these stories about, hey, I'm going to write a story about a guy looking back who's 30, 40 years old, whatever, looking back at when he was a kid. This is a little short story called Segregation. Y'all ready? It's real short. Then I'll read an essay and stuff. Then we'll take questions maybe, right? That ain't the story. Hold on a second. It ain't segregation. Hold on a second. Man, I hope it's even in this book. Did I just lie about that? Here it is. Sorry about that. I need to mention this, too, about my father. He did this the right thing. When we moved to South Carolina, I forgot to tell this story. This is an important part of my life. When we moved to South Carolina, we had not been churchgoers for one reason or another. I don't know. I went to church one time after my father fell 45 feet. My mother made us go to church, and I was crying because I'm going, who is this Jesus guy? Everybody seems to know except for me, but that's another story. When we went to South Carolina, of course, you had to go to church Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday. So we did all that stuff. And then one Wednesday night, it was Ask the Preacher question, and somebody said, what do we do if a black person, this is 1965, what do we do if a black person comes in our church? And somebody else stood up and said, ignore him and hope he don't come back. And everybody went, ha, 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 ha. They didn't use the word black, by the way. You know, you can imagine. And my father got up on his crutches. I was wearing a seersucker suit, just like Dr. Williams. I was looking spectacular. And we started walking out of that church slowly. I mean, just him on those crutches. And I thought I had done something wrong. I'm getting dragged by the ear. So this is kind of a seminal point in my growing up, because then my father wouldn't allow me to go to church because he said, you ain't going to go to church. That's where all those racists hang out every Sunday and blah, blah, blah. So even when I had like a nice Catholic girlfriend, I'd say, Vivian wants me to go do that knee thing a lot on Christmas Eve or whatever that's all about. And he'd go, no, you cannot go. If you go, move out of the house. So that's wrong. And then when I went to the Baptist school, man, he was not happy about that, I'll tell you that. My father also he drove around and had me meet people from, we were like lower middle class, upper lower class, but he had a lot of African-American friends and kind of poor, what I call lint heads, where I'm from, cotton mill worker friends. This is just a quick story. One time my father said, out of nowhere, "I think you should have a pet rabbit." I went, "What? I don't know. I want a dog. Dog, Dad, dog. I don't want a rabbit." "No, you need to have a pet rabbit." So he got in the car, and because of these hip things, he kind of drove a car like, because he couldn't hold his thing. So we went to this place where this man sold rabbits, and he had one arm. It was a one-armed rabbit-selling man. He didn't have a right arm. So I get out of the car, and there's these rabbits. Mine ended up being named Snowball. And my dad said, "Shake hands, with Mr. Williams." So I stick out my right hand, and Mr. Williams does that little Bob Dole kind of handshake, where he turns his hand around backwards. And because I'm going, "Whoa, yeah, he doesn't have a right hand." And then my dad, on the way back to the car, while I'm holding this stupid rabbit with pink eyes, it kind of scared me a little bit. Wham! With his, crutch. He goes, "You got to pay attention, boy. You got to pay attention." So that's kind of it. Now I'll read this story. This is the dirtiest story ever. This has the worst word imaginable. It's never mentioned, so it's going to be y'all's dirty minds that conjure this word up. Do y'all know that thing called the name game? Like if you said Tim, Tim, Bo Bim, Banana Fana Fo Fim. Remember that thing? Okay, that's all you need to know. My second grade teacher, it's called unemployment. My second grade teacher didn't think ahead when she agreed to let us use... I'm starting over. My second grade teacher didn't think ahead when she agreed to let us sing that name game song the last hour of Valentine's Day class. Because, as Miss Dupree even admitted, her homemade heart-shaped cookies turned out warped into looking more like bananas, it seemed almost necessary to sing. My friend Compton Lane had suggested everything, seeing as we no longer took music classes weekly. The chorus teacher had quit during Christmas break, saying that she couldn't distinguish an on-key student in all of 45 elementary. I didn't quite understand the implications of Compton's request, didn't realize what lyrics would occur in a class that, oddly, included 2 Chucks, a boy named Lucky, another named Tucker, and an unfortunate girl, unless later on in life she had gathered work in a Nevada brothel, whose parents tabbed her Bucky. "Okay," Miss Dupree said, "we'll sing the song starting with Compton. Then, Comp, you point to whoever's next." She went on to say how we would hand out our cheap Valentine's cards to each other afterwards and eat her misbaked cookies that, once she realized hadn't come out heart-shaped, were iced yellow with Happy Valentine's Day painted in red. As years went on, I remember those cookies as reading only Happy VD. But maybe my memory turns that way because 23-year-old Miss Dupree had gotten fired soon after handing them out. The class stood in a circle, surrounded by 4 corkboards that stressed personal hygiene, poisonous plants, things to do on rainy days, and how to crouch during both natural and unnatural disasters. Compton pointed at me when his name was done, only because we were best friends and both had crazy runaway mothers. We went Mendel, Mendel, Bobendel, Banana, Fana, Fofendel, etc. And the whole time, Comp jerked his head for me to call on Tucker. I pointed toward Tucker next, not knowing this was second grade in a town where people gossip when someone said darn or heck fire after falling from a roof. That our song would have a term I'd heard only once when my father stepped on a nail. Miss Dupree didn't even know the bad word, at least from the expression on her face. Later on, I figured that she'd been trained thusly in her education courses in some class like Psychology of Pranksters or whatever. Tucker pointed at one of the Chucks, Chuck pointed at the other, and then that Chuck chose Bucky in succession. From down the second grade hallway, I'm sure it sounded like a shipload of merchant marines were holding a sing-along. I do that water.